Welcome to EyE on You. As we all know, Hong Kong is facing a serious housing problem due to the shortage of land supply. During the 2018 land supply consultation, the community has focused on the short, medium and long-term land supply options. One of the options that can provide a large amount of land for the local community in the medium to long term is reclamation. Currently, 6 out of 9 new towns in Hong Kong require reclamation. Around 7,000 hectares of land in Hong Kong are reclaimed, accounting for 25% of the developed land area. However, from 2001 to 2005, only around 40 hectares of land was reclaimed each year.
In 1997, the protection of the Harbour Ordinance was brought into law, enshrining the harbour as a special public asset and a natural heritage for all Hong Kong people. In December 1999, the law was amended to expand its scope to cover the whole of the harbour. However, we are now facing ever-increasing demand for housing and commercial buildings, for factories and infrastructure, for more roads and greater port facilities. According to the Court of Final Appeals decision in 2004, the presumption against reclamation under Section 3 of the Protection of the Harbour Ordinance can only be rebutted if the single test overriding public need is met. My colleagues, Ms. Alice Mak, LegCo member and a member from Hong Kong Federation of Trade Union, has proposed to introduce a private bill to reverse the scope of the ordinance to the 1997 version. We are glad to have her with us today to discuss why the amendment of the ordinance is needed and how the suggested amendment will be consistent with the development needs of Hong Kong. Without further ado, let's welcome Alice. Hello, Alice. Welcome to our show today.
Hi, Eunice. Hi, Eunice.
As we know that you have proposed an amendment to amend the existing protection of the Harbour Ordinance by way of a private member's bill. So before we talk about the private member's bill, can you tell us about the procedure of initiating the private member's bill in LegCo?
In our basic law, Annex 2, it has stated very clearly that the introduction of a bill can be by the government or by the individual member. As for the bill to be introduced by the government will need to get a simple majority of votes from the Legislative Council. But for a private member's bill, then I need to get the simple majority of 2 groups of voting. You know, in the Legislative Council, we have a division votes. Right. So I need to get 2 groups of votes, the support from the 2 groups. So the difficulty is I do not only need to get the simple majorities, the support of my bill, I need more votes to get my bill passed.
So compare with the government bills, which is proposed by the government, it's more difficult to make it happen, right?
Yeah, I need to get more votes.
So I've heard people saying that the Article 74 of the Basic Law restricts the power of the LegCo members to propose a bill. Well, I found that you have actually introduced a private member's bill in May, and it was passed. So how do you personally evaluate the Article 74 of the Basic Law, whether it is aimed at the division of power between executive and legislature, or it is restricting the power of the legislature?
I understand and respect the principle behind Article 74 of the Basic Law, because we need to strike a balance for the legislature. When a member proposed a private member's bill, the format of the law drafting should be according to the legal framework. And also, when the member proposes a bill, and when the bill relates to certain government policies or government financial implications, the executive will have the right, and they should have the responsibility to consider whether the private member's bill will have a mass impact on the society. That's why I understand the principle behind Article 74 of the Basic Law, but I hope the administration, they will understand why I would like to propose a private member's bill. As you said, in fact, my private member's bill on the Water Service Amendment Ordinance was passed in May. that Perfect Members Bill aims at regulating the landlords so that landlords cannot overcharge their tenants on water supply. For that bill, Chief Executive has already given written consent to my bill because she also sees the need to amend the proposed bill so that the tenants can be protected against overcharging of water supply. I do hope that the Chief Executive will also consider to give me written consent this time, although I know this protection of Harbour Ordinance will have much more important impact on the society.
So under what stage is it in for the protection of the Harbour Bill for now? And have you started the lobbying now?
Yeah, for my amendment, in fact, it consists of two parts. The first part is to state very clearly the central harbour. So my first part of the amendment is to protect the central harbour. That is, the areas from Central to Tsim Sha Tsui. In fact, that central harbour is also stated in the ordinance when the ordinance was first passed in 1997. The second part of my amendment is to allow the Chief Executive in Council to have the power to consider any works can be carried out in areas outside the central harbour, according to when they see there is a public need. So Chief Executive in Council can decide whether to carry out any public works that's according to public needs.
Okay. As far as I understand, the Secretary for Development stated that they have no plan to amend the ordinance at this stage. So are you worried that your proposal will affect the relationship between the executive and the legislature?
I don't think so. And I have confidence that the government should start to start to look into the review of the ordinance. And in fact, my original aim to amend the ordinance is to allow the administration and the government departments with more visibility and flexibility to carry out public works along the harbour front. Because, in the areas outside the central harbour, some government departments has already thought of carry out some public works. But because of the existing ordinance, they are afraid that they have to go through a lot of very complex procedures to prove that the construction works are according to the overriding public needs. So I think the government should consider start to review the ordinance. The passage of my amendment, it will allow the government departments and the officials with more flexibility and more creativity when they do any planning along the harbour front.
Yeah, it seems that the current legislation is very restrictive on for the development of the harbour front. So what we see that your proposal is to give flexibility and to give more open options for the government to do the harbour works for Hong Kong residents. So how do you assess on the public consultation and the public opinion for your bill?
In 1997 and 1999, when the bill was passed, there's so many stakeholders and so many organizations and people supported the bill. So you can imagine those who supported the bill will oppose my amendment unless they have changed their views. So it won't be easy. But although it's very difficult, but I think we need to do something. In the new era of Hong Kong, we should make some difference, and we cannot just bound by the existing ordinance and limit our visibility to carry out any public works that's beneficial to the society.
So assuming the amendment is passed, which sector do you think will be benefited the most, and to what extent can it alleviate the problem of the insufficient land supply in Hong Kong?
My amendment is to give the government departments with more visibility and flexibility when they consider any town planning. Because current ordinance, the government department would just they will not think about how to make well use of the harbour front. So they will the ordinance simply will limit their planning, the ideas and creativity of their ideas of the planning of the how to make well use of the harbourfront. The harbour area from Kwun Tong to Kai Tak. If you have been there, then you will find the transportation very inconvenient, and the traffic there is very heavy, always traffic jam. The passage of my private member's bill, the government can consider to build a bridge from Kwun Tong to Kai Tak. So it will ease the very heavy transport in the area. And I hope more of this kind of public works can be carried out to help the people living along the harbourfront.
So even if the legislation that you propose has been passed, so do you think that there will still be hurdles to overcome, let's say for the environmental assessment, or the town planning and the public consultation of such changing for the harbourfront? Do you think those are the hurdles that the government has to overcome for the future years?
Yes, even with the passage of my private member's bill, the government still will face many difficulties when they decide to carry out any reclamation along the harbourfront. As you said, they have to go through the town planning procedures and the environmental protection, whatever. So very complex procedures. So the government should consider to review all those ordinances, see how to make our construction or the work of our government more efficient. We have, in fact, spent a lot of time on very complex planning procedures.
Other than the land reclamation, we know that FTU also supports the development of the periphery of the country parks. However, such development is now restricted due to the Country Park Ordinance. So do you think that the government should review that ordinance?
Yes, I think the government should review all relevant ordinance, because FTU thinks that we do not just want enough land supply. We need abundant land supply to solve housing problem in Hong Kong. So we have to make well use of our land and to consider every possibilities to increase land supply, like make use of the periphery of the country park. And so all the relevant ordinance should be reviewed. It is time for the government to do something and make a difference. So we have to review all the very outdated and very the complex ordinance.
So be it reclamation or development of the country park, there is bound to be opposition from the conservation groups. So do you think that the resistance in the LegCo will be reduced after the improved electoral system? And do you think that the relevant groups will be more confrontational outside the LegCo?
Well, this is not easy.
Yes.
Because as I said, I have never underestimated the difficulty in gaining the support from the society, and also especially those NGOs on conservation of environment. I can see the strong opposition from them. But as I said, we still need to do. When we think that it is a way to increase, to help to increase land supply and help to increase the efficiency of our administration of our government's works, then we should do it, no matter how difficult it is. I will expect very vigorous opposition from those NGOs, but I hope I can have the chance to explain to them. And as I said, the first part of my private member's bill is about the preservation of our central harbour. So anybody who wants to preserve our harbour, protect our harbour, they should support my private member's bill. Because with the passage of my bill, no one can carry out any works or reclamation in the central harbour. It is well preserved.
Yes. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And we do hope your bill will be passed.
Thank you.
And we shall celebrate.
Yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.